A lamp sits in the corner of a living room nobody uses. It was bought during a weekend run through a home store, one of those places designed to make a person feel as if a slightly different arrangement of objects might create a slightly different life. The lamp looked elegant, warm, adult. It cost just enough to feel like a responsible indulgence. It came home in a cardboard box, got assembled on the floor, glowed beautifully for 3 evenings, and then faded into the background like most purchased things do. But the lamp never really cost what the receipt said. It took up floor space in an apartment where every square foot had a price. It joined a room that now needed a side table to feel balanced, then a rug so the corner did not look unfinished, then new curtains because the old ones suddenly looked tired next to the new lamp. It had to be dusted, moved, protected during cleaning, loaded carefully during the next move, and fit somehow into the next place, even if the layout changed. The money spent on it disappeared once. The cost of owning it kept billing quietly. That is the part most people miss. Almost everything you buy costs money twice. The first cost is obvious. The second one hides inside storage, maintenance, mental energy, and opportunity cost. It hides in the bigger apartment, the fuller garage, the more complicated weekend, the more crowded calendar, the budget that always seems tighter than it should, and the investment account that never grows at the pace it could have. People look at their finances and assume they have an income problem, or a discipline problem, or a bad luck problem. Sometimes they do. But often the deeper issue is that their life is carrying too many objects, and every object is quietly demanding more from the future than it appeared to demand in the moment of purchase. That is why people can earn decent money and still feel like they are always recovering. On paper, their spending might not even look reckless. There is no single disaster, no absurd mansion, no reckless luxury yacht, no cinematic financial collapse. Just an ordinary, respectable, modern pattern of living. Buying useful things, convenient things, aspirational things, backup things, replacement things, storage things, organizing things, and occasionally reward things because life is hard and small, pleasures feel harmless. Then one day they look around and realize their home is full, their accounts are thinner than expected. Their weekends vanish into errands, and their money seems to arrive with nowhere to rest. This is not just a clutter story, it is a wealth story. Because the second price of ownership is one of the quietest drains in financial life. It is rarely dramatic enough to scare people early, which is exactly why it can do so much damage over time. Start with storage, because storage is the most visible part of the lie. People think they are paying for things. Often they are paying for places to keep things. That difference matters. An object rarely arrives alone. A chair comes with the corner it occupies. A second television comes with the room arrangement it demands. Seasonal decorations come with bins. Hobby equipment comes with shelves. Bulk purchases come with pantry space. Sentimental items come with boxes. Fitness gear comes with wall space, closet space, or floor space. A bargain is not a bargain if it forces your home to expand around it. This is how possessions quietly become real estate problems. Someone rents a larger apartment because the smaller one feels cramped. That seems like a housing choice, but often it is partly an ownership choice. The extra bedroom is not really for a guest, it is for overflow. For the desk barely used, the boxes not sorted, the treadmill that became a coat rack, the old kitchen appliances kept just in case, the clothes that no longer fit but still feel emotionally active. The garage is not for the car. The garage is for delayed decisions, and delayed decisions are expensive. A bigger home means higher rent or mortgage, higher utilities, more furniture to make the bigger rooms not feel oddly empty. More surfaces to clean, more things to maintain, more temptation to fill the newly available space. People tell themselves they are paying for comfort. Sometimes they are. But a surprising amount of modern housing cost is really storage cost in disguise. Imagine a person spending $400 extra each month for more space. That is $4,800 a year. Stretch that over a decade and you are no longer talking about a lifestyle preference in some abstract way. You are talking about tens of thousands of dollars directed into square footage that exists mainly to protect possessions from consequence. And that is before asking the more painful question: what else could that money have been doing? Because storage never stops at storage, it multiplies. Once you have more room, the pressure to justify the room appears. Another shelf, better containers, more furniture, more home goods. A guest bed for the guest who comes twice a year. Matching pieces so the larger space looks complete. Organization systems for the overflow created by the organization systems that came before. A small number of objects can quietly pull an entire cost structure upward. Then there is maintenance, the second bill that never prints a receipt. Every purchased thing enters life like it is making a simple request. Give me a place. Use me when needed. Enjoy me. That is the sales pitch. The truth begins afterward. Things need batteries, cleaning, filters, cables, cases, repairs, upgrades, software, replacement parts, protection plans, compatible accessories, seasonal attention, careful storage, eventual disposal. Even analog items have a maintenance tax. And furniture gets stained, shoes wear down, cars need tires, fuel, insurance, repairs, registration, parking, washing, and sometimes monthly payments long after the excitement has died. Home ownership, often romanticized as a wealth-building milestone, becomes brutally expensive when every room is full of items that can break, age, or become incompatible with the next version of life. This is why the cheapest object is often the one never purchased, not because spending is immoral, because ownership is rarely passive. A coffee machine is not just a coffee machine if it needs pods, descaling, filters, counter space, replacement parts, and mental attention every time it stops behaving correctly. A printer is not just a printer if it creates ink costs, paper clutter, wireless troubleshooting, and eventual replacement after spending most of its life doing nothing. A second car is not just transportation if it becomes another insured, depreciating machine sitting in the driveway, asking to be justified. The first price is what gets people excited. The second price is what wears them down. And wear matters because maintenance is not only financial, it is cognitive. That brings us to mental energy, the cost almost nobody budgets for. People talk about money as if it lives inside spreadsheets. In reality, money also lives inside attention. A crowded life drains decision quality. Every object you own occupies at least a tiny portion of mental space. Where is it? When was the last time it was used? Does it still work? Should it be repaired? Do you need another one? Why can't you find the charger? Where will it go after the move? Is it worth selling? Should you keep it for later? Did you renew the subscription attached to it? Does it fit the new place? Is it protected? Is it clean? Is it still under warranty? Did you buy a duplicate because the first one disappeared into the house? None of these questions are life-shattering on their own. That is why the cumulative effect gets ignored. Yet the mind experiences them as friction, and friction changes behavior. A mentally overloaded person is more likely to make expensive decisions for relief. They order food because the kitchen is chaotic. They buy a duplicate because finding the original feels harder than paying again. They miss return windows. They forget renewal dates. They keep paying for subscriptions because cancellation requires a password they do not want to recover tonight. They postpone insurance shopping, tax prep, estate paperwork, retirement planning, debt payoff strategy, and investment research because their administrative bandwidth is already crowded with managing the consequences of ownership. This is where consumer culture becomes sneaky. It sells objects as solutions to discomfort, while quietly increasing the amount of life that must be managed afterward. You buy containers to organize the things you bought to simplify your life. You buy apps to track the subscriptions created by the services meant to save time. You buy furniture to hold the items acquired during stress, then buy cleaning tools and storage systems to manage the furniture and the items sitting on and inside it. Consumption starts to masquerade as control. But control does not always increase. Often the burden does. And once mental energy becomes scarce, the most important financial behaviors begin to break. You stop checking balances. You stop reviewing statements. You stop catching small leaks. You stop transferring money into savings because urgent, visible clutter keeps defeating quiet, invisible planning. The future loses every argument against the present when the present is loud enough. That is where opportunity cost enters like a ghost. Opportunity cost is the money your money never got the chance to become. It is the retirement contribution never made because the cash went into a bigger apartment for a growing pile of possessions. It is the investment account that could have been built from the monthly storage bill. It is the emergency fund that never reached safety because each month contained a handful of harmless purchases that were only harmless in isolation. It is the debt that could have been eliminated years earlier if the lifestyle had demanded less feeding. This is the cruel genius of small, repeated spending tied to ownership. The damage almost never feels immediate. $100 here, $200 there, a few extra subscriptions, a better shelf, a new tool, a replacement for something that was misplaced rather than lost. An upgrade because the previous version looked tired next to all the newer additions. None of it seems large enough to change a life, but wealth is usually changed by repetition, not drama. A person who sends $200 a month into maintaining and storing non-essential possessions is not only spending $200, they are refusing that money the chance to become future cash flow, future resilience, future freedom. Over 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, the gap widens, not because deprivation is magical, because compounding rewards whatever you keep feeding, and most people are feeding their lifestyle instead of their assets. That is why some homes look full while the balance sheet behind them looks strangely thin. The owner has converted labor into objects rather than options, and options are what wealth actually feels like. The option to leave a bad job, the option to survive a slow season, the option to say no to debt, the option to relocate, rest, help family, invest during downturns, or wait instead of panicking. Options come from liquid strength, from low fixed costs, from assets growing somewhere quieter than the living room. They do not come from a house so packed with owned items that every setback turns into a cash flow emergency. At this point, the whole issue needs to be reframed. What most people call buying is often a future obligation contract. The object is only the visible part. Behind it comes the promise of storage, maintenance, mental bookkeeping, and opportunity surrendered. You are not just purchasing a thing. You are inviting a recurring relationship. Some relationships are worth it, many are not. Take clothing. A shirt is not merely a shirt if it joins an overcrowded closet that already makes mornings harder. It becomes another thing to wash, fold, store, coordinate, evaluate, and eventually discard. Take digital services. A streaming subscription is not just entertainment if it joins a pile of auto-renewing charges, forgotten passwords, and content you barely have time to watch. Take home decor. A decorative impulse is not just aesthetic pleasure if it pushes the apartment toward needing more space, more cleaning, more matching purchases, and more money tied up in objects that cannot help during an emergency. People often think the financially responsible question is, can I afford it? That question is too shallow. The better question is, what will this keep costing me after today? That question changes everything. It turns the bargain into a burden when appropriate. It turns the harmless into the cumulative. And it exposes how often purchases are not isolated moments of pleasure, but beginnings of administrative chains. And it reveals something else that matters a great deal. Owning less is not just about spending less. It is about protecting the systems that make wealth building possible. Those systems are simple but fragile. You need surplus between income and expenses. You need energy to make decent decisions. You need enough clarity to track where money is leaking. You need space in the budget for investment, debt payoff, and emergency savings. You need a life that does not require constant financial rescue. Every unnecessary possession presses against those systems from one side or another. This is why two people with similar salaries can end up in completely different worlds. One person earns well, but their life is object-heavy. They have the larger home, the full garage, The subscription stack, the financed upgrades, the convenience purchases caused by the chaos created by the upgrades, the maintenance calendar, the duplicate items bought because the originals are buried somewhere in the house, the storage costs, the lingering debt from buying comfort too early, and the constant sensation that money comes in only to be swallowed. They do not feel reckless, they feel busy. The other person earns about the same, but keeps ownership edited. Fewer items, smaller housing footprint, fewer recurring obligations, less visual noise, lower maintenance, more cash left standing after the month is fed. They invest steadily, not heroically. They keep a buffer. They can absorb inconvenience without panic. Their life may look less impressive from the doorway, but it behaves better under pressure. That difference is wealth, not the appearance of abundance, the ability to remain stable while assets quietly grow. There is also a moral seduction in buying that makes this harder to see. Modern consumer life trains people to interpret ownership as progress. A fuller home can feel like a fuller life. A larger place can feel like evidence of upward motion. More products can feel like self-improvement, preparedness, taste, adulthood, generosity, identity, or reward. Some of those feelings are real, but they are not free. And if they are financed by slower investing, thinner savings, rising fixed costs, and constant background stress, the emotional story attached to the objects can become wildly more expensive than the objects themselves. This is why many people are shocked the first time they seriously declutter. They expect to feel only loss. Instead, they often feel a strange financial clarity. Rooms breathe differently. Cleaning gets easier. Decisions get simpler. Missing things become easier to notice. Spending triggers become more visible. The house stops behaving like a warehouse of unresolved past selves. In that calmer environment, money choices often improve, almost by accident. Not because the person became saintly, because the house stopped fighting them. That phrase sounds poetic, but it is practical. A home can fight your finances. It can demand too much space, too much care, too much attention, too much replacement, too much recovery time. Or it can support your finances by being easier to run, easier to clean, easier to leave, easier to understand, and cheaper to sustain. And that support compounds. Less storage means lower housing pressure. Lower housing pressure means more monthly margin. More margin means more capacity for savings and investment. Less maintenance means fewer surprise costs and fewer time drains. Less mental clutter means cleaner attention and less stress spending. Less opportunity cost means more of your income is being converted into assets rather than atmosphere. That is how wealth is often built in ordinary lives, not through spectacular income alone, but through reducing drag so that ordinary income can finally travel somewhere useful. The tragedy is that the second price of ownership rarely announces itself as danger. It appears as inconvenience, a full closet, a crowded garage, a house that always needs one more organizing project. A budget that is oddly tight despite decent earnings. A sense that life administration has become a part-time job, a retirement account behind schedule, a savings account that keeps getting interrupted by normal monthly life. Look closely and the pattern becomes clear. Money is not only leaving through purchases, it is leaving through the ecosystem each purchase creates. So what do you do with that knowledge? You start pricing objects honestly. Not by the sticker alone, but by the square footage, the future errands, the maintenance chain, the administrative burden, the stress risk, and the opportunity cost. You stop asking only whether something is nice, useful, or affordable in the moment. You ask whether it deserves continued support from your future income and future attention. You become suspicious of any purchase that creates new categories of work. You become skeptical of storage used to preserve indecision. You become careful about expanding your home to accommodate accumulation. You stop confusing organization purchases with financial progress. You notice when convenience is being purchased to cope with the strain created by previous consumption. And perhaps most importantly, you give the freed money an assignment. Because money not spent on the second price should not simply disappear into other noise. It should become cash reserves, debt reduction, investment contributions, or room to breathe. That is when the lesson becomes visible in the balance sheet. The family that does not need the larger house can invest the difference. The person who avoids the storage unit can build an emergency fund faster. The household that owns fewer fragile, aging, incompatible things faces fewer random expenses. The individual whose home is calmer often needs less recovery spending and has more energy to handle the boring tasks that protect wealth. Small changes begin to stack. Then they compound. And compounding, unlike clutter, works in your favor when fed consistently. Go back to the lamp in the corner. It looked innocent. Most purchased things do. That is the point. Very few objects enter a home wearing a sign that says, "I will keep costing you." But many do. They cost in rent, in utilities, in accessories, in maintenance, in stress, in time, in missed opportunities, in postponed investing, in background noise, in the gradual shrinking of financial flexibility. Everything you buy does not always cost money twice in a strict accounting sense. Sometimes it costs money 5 times. Once when you buy it, again when you house it, again when you maintain it, again when it occupies your attention, and again when the money tied up in it never gets to grow into something stronger. That is why wealth so often belongs, quietly, to people whose lives are less crowded than expected. Not empty, not joyless, not stripped of beauty or comfort, just less burdened by possessions asking to be carried forever. They understand that freedom is not only about what you can buy, it is about how little of your future must keep paying for the past. And once you understand that, buying changes, space changes, maintenance changes, money changes. Because the goal stops being to fill life. The goal becomes to stop draining it,